deed restrictions, anything with the lake. We've had it searched from top to bottom. We've had all the best attorneys on it. We've had accountants on it. We've had.
I don't mean what you can do with them.
Well, you said about the deed
I mean what you
restriction.
can do in front of the planning commission.
Well,
That's my only concern. That's why I was there last week.
The deeds are looking good, okay. You had quite an opportunity to speak. There were some others who wanted to speak for you.
I'm Bob Sweat. I just have one comment to say. I think what maybe misled Bob was that you insinuated in some sense that we were running a business on the water. We have no intentions of doing that. It's simple. If you want to fish, you have to get a permit because of the insurance. It's simple. It's simple. It's not.
Why?
Association of 2 million.
Everyone's going to be given this chance to speak at the
It's very
microphone.
simple, and everybody's made it hard. If a child drowns in that lake, we get sued. You know, so we've been advised we have to take insurance. So that was the only thing I took offense to.
What I inferred was that we don't know that plan.
We do not have a plan, okay?
That's-
We didn't have a plan to have a fishing tournament, to buy a lake to have a fishing tournament. We use the resources God gives us. God has provided us with this, and my son felt led to use it. My husband and I said, absolutely. If they want to come, you know, we're not having a wine taste. We're not selling beer. We're not doing a lot of things that you need permits to do. We're raising money for school, and it's not a business. Selling permits on the lake to fish there is not making it a business. It's the civil way, it is the civil way to be able to settle who wants to fish and who doesn't want to fish.
One second. Let's stop right now. No.
Let's have order, please, so we can ask to leave.
It's civil.
Please step back. You've had an opportunity to speak, and, you know, I gotta be fair to everyone. There's a lady over here who wanted to speak earlier. You can come up and speak now.
We don't know.
Can you come up to the microphone, state your name?
I'm Judy McCoy. I don't know what the new rules are. There's never been anything in writing sent to any of us. It's just word of mouth. And we've heard it's going to cost us $500 to fish in our own backyard. It's going to cost us $500 if we want to.
Does he understand that that's a civil matter? It has nothing
Yeah.
to do with us.
Well, and that's why we're so upset. Oh, no, I'm not upset. At all. I
There's nothing
just
we
want
can
to
do
know
here.
what the rules are, and that's why we're.
Don't do that at the meeting now.
Okay. Well, but that's why we're all
Yeah, I
here.
But you have to understand what we talked about before as far as being a civil matter. We cannot control things between property owners. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Mary Ann Horn. I'm a resident of Airhead Bay. I resent this youngster bringing up Susan Rock's name when she's not here.
I am here. Well, she is here.
Where is she? Oh, there. She came in. She works 60, 70 hours a week. Things are planned. She can't possibly meet with you whenever you have a whim to meet with her. Things are scheduled.
Ma'am, that's nothing to do with this meeting.
Well, that's, you know, he brought it up. That's just not fair.
I understand what you're
That's not fair.
Is there anything else other than civil matters here that someone would like to speak? Yes,
I'm Sabelle, sorry. I don't even live more. But you know how you hear all these things. Everybody's yak, 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 yak. And it's fearful because I own a home that's close by. So therefore, even though I can't use the lake, I can't even see the lake. But I'm one street over. So I'm worried about property values. But I've only been a resident for a short amount of time. So this is my first question to you. I was told I live in Mahoney County.
You did.
I do. Okay. I was also told I'm so confused.
You're also in Fairfield County.
I'm in Fairfield Township, thank you.
In the city of Columbiana.
In the city of Columbiana. Who does actually oversee, not civil matters, but who oversees? Let's just say, and
good looking. It's not that I have a problem with what they're doing. I love the lake. When I pull in to go into my area, I go by the lake, and it's beautiful. And I thank you so much for buying it and for, whatever. But I do have concerns about, everybody seems to not quite understand who is governing any of this. And they're developers, and they know exactly what they're doing. They know if you get in touch with the Ohio Natural Resources, don't you? Like when you were clearing out that wooded area, did you have to get in touch with them? No. You didn't because you weren't disturbing it?
Ma'am, this again isn't what you
Okay,
mean.
right.
You're addressing an
Okay.
individual.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's not fair.
So number one, do you oversee that part?
It's in the city of Columbiana, it's overseen by council, planning commission, city manager, police department, all the entities of the city of Columbiana, yes.
So if they were to make any improvements, or to make any changes whatsoever, they have to go through what, like the zoning commission?
You're expanding too much. You say anything whatsoever. On your own property, you can do a lot of things.
Right,
And they can do a lot of things on their own property without coming to see us.
absolutely.
If they want to build a house, they're going to have to come and get a building.
Right, so they would come to you, they would come to the zoning commission, right?
They would see the building inspector,
Sector and then
and he could give them a permit. Not every house comes to.
Right, because it's starting to.
But as far as the condo associations and stuff, they have no control.
I'm not in any of that. I don't have any of that. I don't want to be any of that.
You're not.
Sorry, everybody. What I want is just some answers to know if they do something in the future, who is it that I would? So,
It has to be something that
like,
pertains to us.
That warrants coming.
Coming warrants coming to us.
Right.
They can
Like-
put us, they can put flowers in, they can put
Right.
whatever they want to do.
Right.
It's their property.
They
They don't
can
have to
bring
come to us.
Anytime you have a question,
They come in and
sure,
talk.
call
Right.
or come in,
Call
see
in.
the
Call in.
manager, police chief,
Okay.
building inspector, anyone like that, and they will let you know
who
exactly the
oversees
answer.
that? The ORC? I mean, who oversees you?
What's the ORC?
The Ohio Revised Code?
We have our own charter form of government.
Okay, and you're underneath the.
Give me an example of what you want to oversee.
Okay, they own the property.
Yeah.
Is it commercial?
Is it commercial?
Yeah. What is it?
It's zone residential.
It's own residential.
No, I disagree.
What
Piece on the lake, it's zone commercial.
is it zone
Is it,
commercial?
okay.
And it's, you know what, and it's so zone commercial that I could put on a car dealership.
You mean the
on it.
lake is zone
That was my
commercial?
next point.
Huh?
The lake is
The
zone?
piece of property that's.
Oh, okay.
Pardon me?
Yes, he'd have to come to us and say what he
If
wants
he
to
was
build.
gonna put a car dealership on
Yes.
commercial property, he would have to have a planning commission for that, yes.
Why? Is it commercial?
And it's
Still
still
still required.
Okay.
It's the biggest.
And then the ORC would oversee that?
No,
No. All right. And I guess that would be it. Just, I was a little bit concerned as to whether your Ohio Natural Resources Council, because I didn't know if that was fed by any other, is it fed by creek, has natural springs or anything like that. Okay. And the only other thing that you kind of brought up that I'm going to say, because I think I have read in the paper, and I think it falls under you, are the golf carts. You'd mentioned something about golf carts, because I'm all down about golf carts.
at one time event, he can get one.
Okay,
You
so
take
like
them back.
we could get golf carts maybe someday?
No.
All right, thank you very much.
There's a lot of discussion about golf carts. We don't want to go, we're going to continue on.
That was the worst conversation.
I would suggest that the four condo associations get together, make peace with each other, make some uniform things, because when you have four groups out there, and this is just my opinion, there is no way. How can you get along when you have four groups that won't even go? One group says we'll pay the insurance, three groups say they won't. Get together and work together, have a nice community out there. That's my thing.
Is there anyone wanting to speak, council, now on any issue other than what we just discussed? Because I think we pretty much beat that one up.
Do we need to say anything now?
concerning,
Our case,
once you wait until we come to your ordinance.
just
Because
want to
we'll
make
open
sure.
it up to discussion at that point too. Okay? Yes. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Steve Bavalik. I'm the manager at PNC Bank here at downtown office. On June 7th, we're wanting to have a customer appreciation day. Some of you may be aware we did some major renovations inside the building. Want to have some activities for the children also, possibly bringing in a jump tank. Nothing extravagant.
No fishing tournaments?
No fishing.
No golf carts?
We may ask you to participate in the jump tank, but yeah, nothing.
We could raise a lot of money.
But, we might do the hot dogs on the front porch with the gas grill. Again, some small games for the children. It'll be mostly, as long as we can set it up, it'll be on the grass.
Okay, where you thinking of putting another tank?
The one back area has a little bit of grass that we might be able to put in there.
You're not going to impede in the flow of traffic through the parking lot? Or-
No, nothing in the parking lot. Something may overlap, but we're not planning on. The may overlap on the sidewalk. If that was the case, we'd have something that ropes off. But mostly, we're wanting to do it on the property or the sidewalk.
And you spoke to the police chief at all concerning this?
No, I talked to Mr. Belding and
You might want to bring his attention and talk to him and so you can go over any issues that may be. I think it would be better. Does anybody have any questions for him?
Mr. Mayor, one comment, Mr. Billy did speak to me about that event, and we had some conversation from what I was told, and I haven't spoken to this gentleman, what I was told, it doesn't appear to will impede traffic or be a large problem in any way. There's a public parking lot there for people to park and attend the event. Anything does come up, we're more willing, like any other events, to try and help you. What day you guys think?
Friday, June 7th. Well, we're advertising as PNC's Chilling and Grilling event. We're going to have refreshments, maybe.
Give away money?
Yeah. Well, we are, sweepstakes, $250 gift card, things like that. So there are sweepstakes going on. But, refreshments, maybe cotton candy, popcorn, things like that.
Friday, June 7th, normal business hours?
Normal business hours. We're setting it from like 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It may run over a little bit. We'll start at earlier. No extended hours or anything like that. It's probably 4 or 5 hours.
Chief, you don't have an issue with it at all?
Not from what I've heard at this point, sir. If there's anything that I don't know, then certainly
I
I
can
can
get
get called, we
with you.
can go through it. What Bob Belding told me, it appears that it's just like any other business or store that has this type of event, hot dogs and refreshments, it doesn't appear to be a problem.
I'll second it.
Motion is second, any other comments?
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
We might vote no yet. Kidding.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone else? I'd like to speak to council? Yeah, Brandon.
Building and zoning department report.
We keep it quiet, please.
I'll just give you a little bit of update what's been going on, what's going on. Boy Scout troop number 18 will be picking up litter tomorrow throughout the day. I want to thank them for that. The water plant is starting to fill a pool. Wastewater plants are continuing to install that research project. The street department, we put in the paper that they will begin on the 29th, South Main Street. They'll be grinding that. And then it'll be closed the 29th and the 30th. Every business has been notified. Is that them? Yes, from Railroad Street, clear up to Main Street. And police chief and his crew hand-delivered notices, exactly what's going on, which was suggested at the last council meeting. It's been in the paper and it's been on the internet, and our crews will work as fast as we can to get the road back open. To continue to patch holes, and they put up American flags this week.
Thank you for Firestone, that was, I've got the calls.
Park and Cemetery, the tennis courts will be resealed through this week. One day this week they'll do that grant that we obtained last year. Again, the filling of the pool is being done. It takes about 38 hours of operation at the water tank to produce enough water to provide the citizens with the flow and the pool at the same time. Lots of mowing being done, the park looks great, and cemetery does too. Hats off to that crew. Heartland Christian Volunteer Day was last week. 200 volunteers ranging from K through 12, as you mentioned. They did do a lot of projects, and we really thank them for that.
We can get something in the paper, how much we appreciate what they did for us.
And if you have any questions, I can definitely answer exactly what they did. They cleaned out flower beds, put down mulch, planted flowers, painted benches, cleaned out fun land, picked up sticks, cleaned out weeds, picked up pine cones, and cleaned up the football and baseball stadium, and cleaned the walking trail and washed leaves. The park shop, I think they're meet their May 31st deadline, and there's pictures all passed around here.
Yeah, they put the large overhead doors on Friday, they stayed over on Saturday, so the large doors are on.
Yeah, they just have a few items that do really, little bit of electrical and lighting work, and a couple inspections.
Just to add to that, when the building is done, insurance will be asked to inspect it, because they were still holding about $15,000 of insurance money, that once the building was completed and inspected, we'll receive that additional money.
It is a nice looking building. Good job.
And our crew has really done a lot of, pitched in a lot of work to kind of, save the city money over that project, and we've been doing a great job.
Someone wants to make a comment, Mr. Becker?
Yes, sir. Will the opportunity arise where we could have an open house down there at that new facility for the public to take a look at?
Let's see why not, once it's completed and safe.
Try to get some grass seed in there. Yeah, very good, thanks. Oh, let's see. That's all I had for the report there. Yeah, the buildings, we received the buildings.
Anybody have any questions, comments, for the manager or the field list? Okay. No business. Three ordinances, due to the length of the ordinances, my motion to read by title only.
So moved.
King,
Yes.
Schleifer,
Yes.
Bellinger,
Yes.
Lakeman,
Yes.
Ferguson,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Ordinance number 13-0-2729, second reading. An ordinance changing the division of streets, cemeteries, and parks and creating separate and distinct distinct division of streets and a separate and distinct division of cemeteries and parks within the Department of Public Service.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Deanne?
Bellinger? Yes. Wakeman?
Yes.
Ferguson?
Yes.
McBain?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Yes.
Ordinance number 13-0-2730, second reading. An ordinance amending the Columbiana City zoning ordinance by rezoning 630 North Main Street from R3 residential medium density to C3 central business zoning district.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? This is where you, if you want to come up here.
Good evening, council members. Happy to be back. Obviously, there was much discussion at the first hearing, first reading, and we're here to try to bring as much fact and logic and sensibility to our application as we possibly can. I'm happy to say, and I know this is ancient history, but it's still relative. Well, I guess it's not ancient, but we were approved unanimously at the planning commission level, and hoping that we can present the same kind of values and sound plan that we had before. At the last meeting, and everybody that's here that was a part of it knows how things fairly well transpired. The greatest amount of discussion, at least to my perception at that meeting, revolved around traffic. And what we have done to attempt to reduce that question of what constitutes traffic, what's a lot of traffic, what's less traffic, more traffic, and so forth and so on. We have enlisted the services of HRG, hometown operation here, and their traffic engineers to do a study for the entire triangle formed by the three streets that are more or less adjacent to the property. And folks from HRG are here. They will present their data. They've collected data with traffic count machines, and they obviously know their stuff. They're traffic engineers by trade, and I think they can present us with data, with fact. We won't be surmising, what's a little more or less. And with that, and for this moment, I'll go ahead and turn that over after they have their discussion. Then I'd like to come back and address you regarding the zoning issue in particular.
Good evening, council. Good evening. My name is Darren Meyer with Liverpool and Rubik. Our office is located at 330 Main Street. This is Tim Tran, the office manager. In working with Mr. Weaver, he contacted us, or we worked with him to put together a brief scope for a traffic analysis to further investigate the concerns that were raised at the council meeting last time. I guess just backing up a little bit of my background, I'm a civil engineer by trade, transportation engineer, and I'm also a professional traffic operations engineer. Over 15 years of experience dealing with traffic. I will point out that most everybody here probably has quite a bit of experience with traffic, because everybody usually drives and has a driver's license, and I won't say that I am more familiar with your local traffic issues than you are, but I'm just trying to lay out facts as we perceive them by doing a standard traffic study that was done by the Department of Transportation, looking at something like this. The exhibits and summary you have before you, just running through them, what we had done is normally we look at traffic capacity issues based on peak hours. Obviously, the AM peak hour, usually the morning rush, and the PM peak hour, generally peak periods of traffic. So if we analyze those peak periods, that gives us a pretty good pulse on when or if there will be traffic issues. So what we have done is at each of the 3 study intersections, we actually had personnel sit at those intersections for 2 or 3 hour periods and actually count manually in 15-minute increments all the cars that went through those intersections. And that's what the peak hour traffic volume figure represents. Each of those numbers, the numbers next to the arrow are the AM traffic volumes, and the number in parentheses is PM, peak hour traffic volumes.
What do those numbers represent? Cars going past there?
Any vehicle that goes past there. Now, to get a little more technical, from an analysis perspective, we do separate heavy vehicles, trucks, and then that gets weighted a little higher when we run our capacity analysis in the synchro program.
So this is just cars?
This is total vehicles.
Total vehicles?
Total vehicle volumes. But let's just say, for example, North Main Street going northbound during the AM peak hour, you have 363 vehicles. There could be 20 trucks in that would be factored into the capacity analysis.
Per hour?
Yes, this is for a 1 hour period in the peak hour. Now, a lot of what we do is based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which there is a manual they published. It's the Trip Generation Handbook, which is a compilation of studies done across the country for various types of developments, fast food restaurants, car dealerships, office space, where it could be other people such as myself, where they're doing studies and take these counts. They all get submitted to this general database, and then that gives us a basis when we're looking at a new development to go back and say, historically, this is generally what these developments produce as far as peak hour trips. So that's where the second exhibit that illustrates new peak hour trips. We took the size of the proposed auto parts store against the trip generation manual and determined that it should generate approximately 12 AM peak hour trips and 28 PM peak hour trips, with approximately a 50% entering and exiting ratio. We compared that also against the developers' historical numbers for the advanced auto parts, and actually our projection based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers was slightly higher. So that just reflects the conservative nature of the trip shown on that figure.
So what you're saying is, in the area where McDonald's is and the proposed auto store is, that you expect 4 more cars to turn in there during the peak hours.
During the
morning
peak hour.
and 12 at night.
It's actually 6 in, 6 out in the morning peak hour, because we have some coming from both directions. We distribute it based on the existing traffic patterns.
So
And
you've
then
added
14
6 cars in and 6 cars out during the peak.
During the AM peak, yes.
And how about the PM peak?
PM peak, 14 cars in, 14 cars out.
That's usually because guys are going home to work on their cars.
Yes, the PM peak from a traffic perspective is usually our governing peak from a traffic analysis standpoint. And then what we have done further is we use an analysis program that's based on Highway Capacity Manual, which is published by the Transportation Research Board, which evaluates intersections, both unsignalized and signalized, and gives them basically, through this analysis, a level of service with grade levels A, B, C, D, E, and F. And that's basically correlated to the average delay experienced by the total of all the vehicles going through that intersection. And that's where this third figure is the existing levels of service. The call-out specifically call out the overall intersection levels of service that we see today, and then they're also listed by each roadway approach.
Can you put that in English?
I guess
So far, but
I understand. Backing up, the levels of service, generally speaking, it'd be similar to, grading in grade school when A is excellent,
Yeah.
B is good, C is average.
So what are we seeing here? What are you telling
We're
me?
actually seeing predominantly level of service A and B with your existing traffic volumes. There is a C during the PM peak existing at the 7th Street intersection.
So that's overall during the
That's the average of peak level of service.
I guess I don't know what A and B mean.
What kind of grade you at school?
I would point out that everybody wants their students, their kids to get all A's and B's, but from a traffic perspective, the level of service D and a fairly heavily traveled road is pretty good. So A and B, what you have here, from my professional opinion, I don't really see there's a capacity issue.
Okay, so you're saying that we have not reached the capacity of this?
Correct.
When I come down 14 and I have to wait 2 and 3 times to turn left on the light, this tells me I'm not waiting.
Well, this says from an average perspective, the level of service, the average person is not waiting.
I guess I'm not average.
I always wait.
You always have to wait to turn left. One car can get through maybe, but if you tell me that it isn't busy, it really...
I understand. I'm not going to sit here and say, your perspective of your daily routes.
I was in Newton's service station the other day. Wanted to pull out, turn left, right where advanced would be. I finally turned around and went out the other side of Newton's, down to the light, across the back. After 6-7 minutes, I couldn't turn left. But that means that it isn't too busy.
Well, from the volumes that we count, you see a capacity problem. Now, to take that...
If you spread them out, I can understand it wouldn't be a problem.
Well, to also take this, we do calculate a peak hour factor, which takes the peak 15 minutes of the hour count, because we do it in 15-minute increments. And then that hour is actually an extrapolation of the peak 15 minutes. So let's say there's 200 cars an hour, but there's 75 during the peak 15 minutes.
That's not a swear word extrapolation.
So it's really evaluating as if there were 300 cars an hour.
So I see two things here. I see a study that tells us whether or not under the current, excluding these guys, under the current traffic pattern and whatever goes on here, we are okay. In other words, if the state come in here, we made a complaint that we needed this widened or turning lane here or a turning arrow on our, they would say, well, based on this, you're just fine. Is that true?
I would say from a capacity standpoint, you are.
So we tried to make a case that we need to do something with our infrastructure here. We wouldn't have any, so say they stand on.
Well,
From a statistical standpoint.
From a statistical standpoint, as far as increasing capacity, so
Okay.
roadway widths.
Had we been into the D and the F range, we might get some attention. Okay, second part of this is the way I understand it. Tell me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to understand. That's where we are today without these guys. With these guys, we add, how many in the morning?
12 peak hour periods.
In the morning. And how many at night?
28.
Will that change this B to a D?
No, it does not
It
change.
doesn't look like the grades changed at all according to your survey.
So the point here is, whether they're or not they're here, statistically it doesn't change.
Correct.
Okay.
From a traffic standpoint, capacity standpoint.
I just want to make sure that, I'm trying to get a conclusion.
Okay. I will just note, taking it one step forward from what we look at traffic-wise, we also took a look at the existing infrastructure as far as the signals and the timings. And would note that, I believe there was a project done 7-8 years ago to upgrade the signals. And there was coordination implemented at that time along 14 and with the 7th Street intersection.
I think more cars could turn left on 14 had there been a turning signal.
With an
Same
area
coming from South Avenue.
Yes. I will say we
But we
didn't,
can't even make that, case to the state because you got all A's and B's here.
well, there are different thresholds for left turn arrows.
Okay, so we might be a D.
So that's kind of a lesser, smaller issue, but more detail oriented
Well,
with the
it
signal.
seems to be the only one we get calls on.
Okay.
I can't turn left. I can only turn left in one car.
What cars about it?
We need a turn signal, but
Yeah.
I don't know how you make it unless he comes back and maybe we ought to ask you to do a left turn signal study so we can get some support and maybe get a left turning lane there and about 14 other places.
What do you think of the study, Chief?
One question I'd ask, and this is just because we're not familiar with your methodology, your counter is counting the traffic. What impact, if any, does it have the people sitting at the light aren't passing your counter? People who are trapped at the light aren't passing your counter. How do you factor that in?
Well, the count is done manually.
I understand, but if they're sitting at the light, they're not being manually counted.
Yeah, we only count them when they go through the intersection.
Exactly, so if they're sitting at the light, how do we factor that in for congestion purposes?
We would look at queuing, and we would factor that in.
What are your findings there?
That we're still finalizing, but to date, we only see a problem potentially at the 7th Street with, you get one person that could block the intersection. and create
Okay,
queuing.
so that speaks to Mr. Ferguson's point about light timing, turn lanes, other mitigation factors. Secondly, was there any thought given to peak hour traffic as it's affected by things like the Rogers sale or other events that happen on the end of town that may tie up that intersection?
At
Are
this
those
point,
things
we just looked at an average weekday peak hour, and
Right.
didn't look into events.
What day did you do it on?
We actually did it on Wednesday, May 15th, I believe we did the PM, and Thursday morning, May 16th, we did the AM peak.
You ever consider doing it on Friday? At 5 o'clock?
I understand that is generally the worst peak period from a traffic perspective, but
I don't know if this could happen.
I guess it's, from a traffic engineering perspective, we try to design kind of to the 85th percentile. That's what we do as far as speeds, and we kind of do that from traffic capacity as
That's
well.
an 8, Tom, 85. 85 is a
Well, if you build roads everywhere to accommodate Friday afternoon rush hour during peak retail, we have way more lanes than we really need the rest of the year, and then we would pay for them anyhow.
So I guess you're telling me that when I want to turn and can't, I'm not really,
You're under average.
I'm under average or something.
Well, that's,
You can understand that, can't you, Tom?
I understand.
Yeah. I think, in further answer to that, I guess what I'm looking for, and I think I heard these, what you're kind of saying here, is that designing, say, a storm sewer system designed for the 100-year flood, why wouldn't we design it for peak traffic? And in anticipation.
Why not take the worst case scenario?
That's what everybody asks, why would you put left turning signals here, here, and up here? When we did it, we didn't, it was not an issue for some reason. Now the only way to get it is if you'll give us a D or an F when we go back to the state.
Well, there is potential, separate warrants if you decide failing intersection level service to get them there. So
In this case, I'd like to fix, so that we can get some turning.
well, if it were to fail, chances are you would need additional
Does it depend
lanes.
which side you're working for?
Pardon me?
Does it depend which side you're working for? If you work for the city, forget its license, different criteria?
No,
No.
it's the same criteria.
I think the point is that you're making is, we can question you all night on whether or not you're 85% or 50% confident level or 95%, do all your statistics. What I'm interested in is if this is the base, right or wrong, or you're close or not close, what do these guys have what effect do they have? That's all I'm interested in. If we've got other issues here, we might come back and ask you to take a look at it and see if it fails. But that has nothing to do with this, in my opinion. Yeah, I want to see the difference.
The
What
difference
these
is
guys
is
are-
almost negligible based on accounts and analysis.
We could have got to that 15 minutes.
Okay, I gave you 5 pages, I wanted to just at least tell you what I gave you.
I understand. No, I understand, but that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to see the data shows. I'm looking for the difference.
And as far as left turn arrows and signal coordination timing, that's one of the things we were kind of short on time to get this a full study done. We were kind of looking at those details as well in the final study. So
I'm sorry, Tom.
And I'm dead serious when I'm talking to the council now. But we ought to really consider doing something like this to get some of these left turning signals. I know it's a state issue. I know they're state roads. I know the state has to
agree
be
with you.
involved.
I agree, we need turning.
But I would not like to see this particular issue die with you guys knowing that you got in town to help us in getting some of these.
yeah, that's why we have the best interest
So you
in
make it
traffic.
worse so the city can be
We report the facts.
But it's lonely back on a Wednesday and a Thursday, because those are the 2 days you did the study.
And again, that's true.
Represents an average weekday peak.
That's true. Your base is different on a Friday than it is. Again, my only concern is how much do they add to the meeting?
Well, they had this on a Wednesday and a Thursday.
That's correct.
We don't know what they had on a Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday.
No, probably
Probably not much.
proportional. You don't
On a
know.
Friday?
Well, I mean, Friday's already bad, they're not gonna add that much more on Friday than what they.
Proportionally, it would be
Proportionally, it'd
probably
be a little bit more.
If they added 3% more confusion on Wednesday, it would probably be 3% more on Friday statistically, based on the citizenship, and it would just be just a higher number.
Okay. So what you're saying is we need a little bit back. Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Thank you.
So, okay, very good. Thank you.
Do you have anything to add to that? Yes, I would like to add one small thing that we discussed. And that was, again, they looked at the functioning of the 3 signals in that triangle. And once upon a time, as I understand it, and please stop me if I'm saying anything that's wrong or misguided, once upon a time, all 3 of those signals were coordinated. Sometime back, I don't know exactly when, the signal at the south end of the triangle got disassociated with the other 2 signals, and it is not now operating in time with the other 2. The north 2 are operating together, the south one is operating freely of its own accord. There is no coordination between or among those 3 signals. There's reason to believe, based on their findings and their research and so forth, that if we could get the south signal back in time with the other 2 signals, that the result would be positive enough that it would lessen some of the impact of the peak hour times, and in the net, the traffic situation would actually be better after we develop our property than it was before, or if we never even showed up.
Just a comment, the 7th Street light never turns green unless there's a car there. It's always goes straight through.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't coordinate that signal with anything else.
Well, and I don't,
It still can be coordinated for when it calls North Main Street and 7th Street. Because it would just hold it to the time so that you can get the cues properly plugged through that intersection and on 14.
You mean if I pull up at the end of 7th Street, then it might not turn green?
It might not turn green.
3 or 4 minutes.
Well, it's a 60-second cycle now, so you may wait as much as 40 or 50 seconds.
Well, that's how long you wait now. It doesn't turn instantly, it waits a while.
It really wouldn't like to see the key would be to get so the platoon of traffic coming on the main line would be coordinated.
So if you stop it and turn the green there, are you gonna put it out of sync?
Well, So it would wait to turn green on the side street until the right time in the cycle so that it keeps progression and coordination with the,
I think what I'm hearing is that if there's some willingness to assist with the timing of the lights on the part of the developer, that would be attractive to us from the standpoint it would be second best choice to turn lanes, in my opinion. If those lights were properly timed, it would enhance traffic flow and thereby reduce congestion. It's true that they're not properly timed now. That's where the backup occurs, often blocking intersection on 14 at times on busy days. So I think that's a potential thing that we can look at if I'm hearing properly from you folks, if there's an opportunity, because as I understand it, part of the problem with the timing of the lights was an inability for us to afford the hardware, if you will, to accomplish that timing effectively. So that's something that I think that may bear council scrutiny if that's what I'm hearing from the developer.
I still can't get it through my head. If you turn green on the 7th Street for, say, 30 seconds, and then it goes back the other way, it's 30 seconds out of sync with the others.
well, the key is not the green on 7th Street. The key is to keep the green on the main lines timed right so that when it gets to 14, that's when it turns green.
Yeah, but how are you going to let 7th Street out there and not change this timing? I'm sorry.
The cycle itself would still, if you're looking at that intersection, would still operate similar to the way it does now. It would just coordinate the
Would it be a
beginning of
shorter
green.
cycle on the next great green? How would it ever catch up?
It doesn't change the cycle timing as far as the length. It just changes when it turns green so that the platoon, as it goes through, gets to 14 at the proper time. Right now, you're releasing that, and then it's turning red at 14 at the same time. So that's where you're building the queues if you coordinate that better. Which it appears that 7 or 8 years ago that was implemented and something like that, possibly in the hardware, and that was turned off. And I think it just needs some updated timings. And
Have you done a study on how this will affect traffic on 6th and 7th and Firestone? Because it's not only going to affect traffic on these locations, it's going to affect traffic all the way back to the square.
we have not conducted a traffic study back that far yet.
Because people will cut through 7th, they will cut through 6th, they will go down Firestone to avoid that congestion. That is there. So you haven't done any study on those roads at all?
How could it be any more than
Well,
what the base level is for the store itself? I mean,
Well, we don't know that because the store's not there. So we don't know what people are going to be cutting through.
we know what the base level is, but if you're gonna add whatever it was, 14 cars or 14 turns going into AutoZone, it wouldn't be there otherwise, then you can't have any more than 14 cars on all those other streets.
Well, you sure can, because people might not want to go down that road. They might decide to go down 6th or 7th and then cut through Firestone. We don't know that.
Well, they can do that now.
You're exactly right. And there is, on a Sunday morning, church letting out, St. Jude's.
Yeah.
Okay?
But that AutoZone's not gonna affect the people that choose to do that are coming out of St. Jude's.
But it's going to create more traffic on 7th and 6th and Firestone. It has to. There's no way around it.
I don't see that.
Sorry, I see you shaking your head. No, it's, part of the study is completed to isolate the effect of what happens at the store. And part of that is because there's 3 interchanges there. The flow in and out of that has to be coordinated regardless of where the traffic comes from. And once it enters one intersection and flows out another, that's what the analysis looks at. So going through that process, if we change that or modify it, regardless of the flow coming out of it, whether it's 7th Street or coming down Main, then that analyzing, you can time it in such a way, it's not going to necessarily back up traffic anymore as it is to move traffic through more freely, so there is no congestion. So that's essentially what the thought process is in this whole scenario. It's not to come up with a solution per se, it's to look at opportunities to make a change that helps this project so it doesn't create an impact.
I think the second part, Mr. King, too, that I would offer just as an observation, it occurs to me that if the traffic was enhanced flowing up Main
North
Street,
and
there'd be a
south.
disincentive to go to 7th because
Right.
now you're gonna have to wait 50 seconds longer for the light to change as opposed to being able to flow through with the properly timed lights, I guess. I mean, that occurs to me, that
And
makes sense to me.
that's what we've seen at this point. That's the controlling intersection.
Who changes the pattern of the light?
We do.
Huh?
We as a city.
Sounds like we'll take a look at it. Regardless.
And I gave them access to Doug Sturgeon and our light specialist last week or so.
And we actually employ an on-site contractor, I think, for some of the more technical pieces of that.
Yeah, Thompson Electric was the president.
We've talked with them, and they did install a new video camera for detection at that intersection. Apparently went bad. And we talked to the supplier at Lights. Pat Masters actually the supplier for the Lights controllers and traffic signals to get an idea from them as to the history and what equipment may or may not be operating. I think we need to dive into that a little bit more before it can be redone. But with some minor revisions, it appears that it would more than offset the minor impact of the auto work system.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, depending on the study, everybody has that information down. Assume that, so, moving on.
So I'd like to think that we've got enough raw data at this point in time, again, to conclude on the comparison. We're not offering really an opinion as to how good or bad or A, B's or C's or D's that we've got now. The primary thrust was to attempt to address the comparison. How much are we adding or taking away from the situation? And if what these gentlemen think is true, I confess readily this is self-serving. But if what he says is true and we time the south light at 7th Street with the other two, we could actually have better traffic flow with the additional development than you have right now. That's big.
And just to further put it in perspective, generally we don't even perform traffic studies if there's less than 100 peak hour trips anticipated to be generated by a development. So, and here your PM peak hour is as many as 28 projected to be peak hour trips. So it's less than a third of the threshold that we would usually have before we would even perform traffic.
By the way, the newspaper said I had a property in Firestone, but in fact it is on 7th Street. This is their house in here, but still back on the property. Just wanted to, not that it matters.
You know, there are a lot of things. I'm sorry, are you done, Mr. Weaver?
Well, I'm going to talk about zoning here in just a little bit.
Oh, okay. No, you had finished. I'm sorry, you had finished.
Are you talking about zoning now?
Yeah, I'm
I just want to
done.
make one statement.
I'm sorry?
I just want to make one
Oh,
statement
yes,
before
sir.
you start into your zoning. You made a statement when you first came up, you said that the planning commission passed this unanimously, and they did. Also, keep in mind that that evening there was representatives from some of the property owners that came in, and they were very conducive to what you're going to do, and willing to do it, and they were happy with what you're doing. Then at the council meeting, last council meeting, came in the actual property owner from right next door, Mr. Stewart, one of them. Evidently, her son was here that evening at planning commission, he was all for it, and then all of a sudden she showed up, and she was very opposed to it. So the only thing I'm going to say is, I don't know if it would have been unanimous. The planning commission had that information put forth at that time. So there was a little bit of misled information that evening to the people who were somewhat representing the property owners. So I just want to make that statement.
I understand, and you know, that's up to folks to show up and voice their concern. I guess it was what it was, and your assessment is correct.
I wish that the actual property owners would be there that evening instead of, I know they went to Florida and things like that, but it'd been much better if the actual property owners had been there that evening.
I would rather been in Florida too. I've got myself a whole stinking speech here, and honestly, I'm not sure how much of it is appropriate or inappropriate. It attempts to discuss the whole rezoning issue in great detail. It attempts to discuss the origin of zoning. It attempts to discuss central business districts, downtown, why people go to a spot that came up, why did you choose this location? And I don't want to just stand here and pummel you guys with arcane, excessive detail. By the same token, probably, as we discuss all this, to a large extent, it is warranted. But again, we largely know what the issues are. I'll try to keep it concise, but I'll attempt to make points that I think are relative to the concept of zoning and rezoning. Winston Churchill said, to improve is to change. To be perfect, change often. Old Winston, I think, was a pretty sharp guy. Fashions change, people change, and cities and towns change. A tremendous amount of change has occurred in and around this property since it was built in the 1960s. The subject property will be seeking rezone. Similarly, the entire area surrounding the intersection of State Highway 164 and State Highway 46 and 14, they have changed dramatically over time. The development of the KO gas station, now the Lucan Duchess, McDonald's, Burger King, Rite Aid, Dutch Village Inn, PNC Bank, Ford dealership, shopping centers, grocery stores, Arby's, Taco Bell, truck sales, car wash, even the Columbiana Church of Christ, along with dozens of other businesses in this immediate area, have resulted in dramatic change right there in that area. Concentrations of businesses in a single spot is not a new idea. It's the way things have been done, actually, probably for the last few hundred years. Looking at the city website the other day, I noticed that Joshua Dixon settled Columbiana in 1802, and William Heald laid the town out in 1805, and we can all pretty well assume that there was a central business district then, too, almost surely right here in downtown. Downtown business districts developed and grew because business people wanted to be as close to the center of where people go for goods and services. Areas like the intersection of 164 and 46 and 14 are the new central business districts of the 1990s and the 2000s and the 2010s. They are the places that people go to find the greatest variety of goods and services in one spot. And as long as human beings are predisposed to do their trading in one area, business people will seek locations to sell their goods and services just as close to that center as they can get. I'd like to start by showing you a reproduction of, and I've got kits here for everybody. This is a reproduction from the county tax plat. Dressed up just a little bit here on your first cover page. Yes, sir. What you're looking at there on the top, that's the zoning as it exists.
Is that R2 or R3? I thought our package said it was currently R40.
I think it's, well, I'll tell you what, we've got a zoning map up there, and I've got a zoning map in my folder. Let's confirm. The zoning map says that it is R2 medium density.
The ordinance we have says that it's being rezoned from R3 residential medium density to C3 central business.
C3 is definitely correct.
My
It does say
recollection says,
R3.
didn't Bob Belding say at the planning commission meeting that there is a mistake in the zoning map? Am I reading that correctly? I can't see.
Another question this is R2 or R3.
I think what he was saying is the existing zoning map says it's R2, but it's really R3. That's just from memory. I can go back through and.
And of course, I'm sure everybody here knows that the reason we're here is because the zoning map says that the property that we're seeking to rezone, the zoning map says that it's zoned C3. But there's other written documentation that apparently says that it's not. So I'm in no position to vouch for what's precise and correct.
You are correct. I mean, this is correct about it. One's the map. One of the maps showed it as C3.
Okay, so the map shows that it's C3.
Now, the question is whether it's currently, that area is R2 or R3.
This map says R3. So did I say R2? For crying out loud.
On here it says R2.
On here it says R2.
And on this zoning map, it says R2.
Our ordinance says that it's being rezoned from R3 to, I don't know if that makes any difference.
Well, does that make a difference?
At this moment, and I'll be quiet if we need to determine whether or not that's germane at this point. You tell me.
I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters.
No, it really matters.
I don't know if it matters.
The planning commission minutes say from R3 to C3. Mr. Blake got the answer whether the ordinance would have.
For the purpose of this discussion, it really doesn't.
It doesn't matter.
Your attempt is to move it to a C3.
Right. I just don't want
If that is incorrect and you're successful, we'd make sure that it was R3 and we would amend the zoning.
Well, I just don't want- I
So
don't
we
want to-
need to take it into account.
Anyway, my point with this zoning exhibit is, I think if we take a look at what we've got, the property is completely surrounded with commercial, except the one side. The standard, and I've been involved in a lot of zoning cases, the standard for taking at least an initial look at the reasonableness of a rezoning is to look across the street and look at your neighbors. We've got C4 across the street. Measured more or less from the center of the subject property, the C4 continues about 350 feet south, almost down 7th Street, just above 7th Street, goes about 310